Welcome to Barrels to Batteries Decoding Energy's Next Chapter, an Enerdatics podcast. I'm your host, Mohit Kaul. For those of you who may be new here, Enerdatics is world's leading energy market intelligence platform, combining deep data, sharp analytics with consulting and advisory support for companies across the energy value chain. In season one, I sit down with startup founders who are reshaping the energy system from hydrocarbons to electrons, from legacy scale to innovation. Each episode, we explore their journey, the pivotal decisions they made, and their vision for what's next. So let's get started. Today, I'm joined by someone who sits right at the intersection of technology, data, and clean energy transition. Marissa Barron is the founder of BuildQ, a company that's rethinking how project diligence and development should actually work in our industry. Before starting BuildQ, Marissa spent time at Level 10 Energy, where she worked closely with developers, corporates, and data. And what I have appreciated about her journey is how she combines a completely different academic background in anthropology with a very real understanding of how this industry makes decisions. She's thoughtful, sharp, and she's building something that has the potential to genuinely change the speed in which our sector moves. Marissa, great to have you on the show. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much for having me. Very excited, as always, to
Absolutely.
talk to you.
Let's get right into some of the questions that I have here. We'll keep it very interactive. If at any point of time you think that you have more to add and I'm jumping onto a question, feel free to stop me. All right. So you studied anthropology at Harvard, right? That's quite a shift from energy, AI, and all of those things. So my first question to you is, what pulled you into this space?
Yeah, so um, I, as a little girl, didn't imagine myself growing up and working in energy or tech for that matter. I thought I was going to be a doctor. And lo and behold, ended up studying anthropology and taking an entirely different path in life, as it seems, it's the common story, right? But the relationship between anthropology and energy and AI isn't so far if you think about it. Anthropology really is the study of systems, of complex systems, how energy, how people make decisions, what they value, how they work together to accomplish common goals. And energy has to be one of the largest, messiest systems on the planet that requires a coordination of millions of people to make decisions around institutions to keep power on the grid. And so, one of the things that you learn in anthropology too is about the the power of knowledge. Knowledge is power. So, who holds information, how it flows, why processes break down. And today, AI really has an opportunity to reshape or provide transparency into those information systems to make those human processes all the more easy and efficient to facilitate.
That's an interesting take. Honestly, I didn't think of it that ways, but you've kind of triggered the next question here. Now, in middle of all this, right? Was there a moment when you were thinking of all of this where you thought that this is what I want to build my career around, right? Do you remember any pivotal point like that?
It was actually so after level 10, I actually went to Stanford Law School to learn more about project finance. And while I was there, I was actually working part time at a solar owner operator, an IPP, that was actively acquiring and structuring project finance, debt and tax equity finance for a portfolio of DG and behind the meter solar projects. And it was just gobsmacking to me how millions of dollars worth of deals could be delayed by weeks or months just because of buried information, mismatched spreadsheets, version control issues. And when I was in the IPP seat, like I was experiencing the real financial impacts of that. Not only was I paying advisors a lot of money to like in monthly retainers to sit around and do nothing while like trying to sort out these information issues, but we were having to pay financing costs on construction loans that couldn't be refinanced because tax equity couldn't close because of this buried information. And so watching talented teams and otherwise worthwhile project investments lose weeks and months and tens of thousands to millions of dollars because of these process failures, it was really clear that there's there's got there's got to be a solution. We have to build something, and traditional software just couldn't do it. You can't anticipate all of the idiosyncrasies of projects kind of in advance. Why like legacy software just doesn't work for here. So yeah, I would say, especially seeing the AI revolution and the kind of energy demands that were being put on the grid, I saw all of that at risk if we didn't do something to change how we built and finance projects.
So if I may have a follow up on that, would you say the process failures that you witnessed, right? That would be something that you say that somebody needs to solve this, right? Was the process failure or be the key factor there that you saw that motivated you?
Yeah, I would say it was, and I think the thing that really pushed me over the edge after uh, doing working in energy for over 8 years, 9 years at the point when I started BuildQ, was that I had seen it not only when I was at level 10 and trio advisors before that, but I saw the process failures while as a lawyer. I was being paid then as a summer associate, and that my teams that I was working with at Skadden, uh, you know, thousands of dollars an hour just to dig through a data room. Like that's not worth anyone's time. And then to see it as an IPP as well, I realized that this is a common challenge, a pervasive challenge that doesn't affect just one stakeholder that is involved in projects, but really everyone around the table.
Absolutely, absolutely. You mentioned AI there, right? So that's where I would want to go next. And is there ever a meeting these days that doesn't have A and I mentioned there, right?
Yeah.
So if and everybody talks about AI, especially even in clean energy, uh, but very few would actually show how it helps, how it makes a difference, right? Could you tell our listeners an example of how, let's say, BuildQ, how is BuildQ saving time or changing decisions on real projects utilizing AI?
Um, Man, I have so many examples. Let's, I'm trying to focus on one or two. Um, let's see. So, BuildQ can facilitate M&A transactions, project financing transactions, and the day-to-day operations of projects, really just anywhere, right, that where there are data intensive manual workflows from permitting, site control, diligence by converting unstructured project data into verified structured information that every counterparty can trust. And part of how we do that is by identifying inconsistencies between the data, between documents within a data room or within the project workspace, and identifying any missing information. Right, like importantly, a developer was selling a project on BuildQ, and it was an NTP project. It had all of its building permits, it had interconnection, it had offtake. It was ready to be constructed. And when they uploaded the project to the platform, took less than 5 minutes. It's really quite a simple setup. Once our system was done processing that entire 500 to 1,000 page document data room, it had identified a very small line item in the building permit that said a bond was required to be posted in order for the building permit to be valid. And it identified that as the bond was missing from the data room.
Interesting.
This is a piece of information that even if that we had identified up front, whereas if it had been identified during the course of legal due diligence as missing, it would have delayed the transaction by potentially weeks. Whereas the developer was able to get the bond and get it into the data room before ever transacting, it was able to streamline the process down the road and ultimately save a lot of time and back and forth.
That is so interesting. That is that. Now, what I'm thinking here is that this is an example that you took, and you said you have many, and totally get that because there's just so much scattered data across deals and projects, and then internal teams and whatnot, right?
Yeah.
How big of an issue do you think is that scattered data today in slowing down execution, right? And how do you think it can be fixed?
Yeah. So I think it's a massive deal and one that's really underestimated because people have accepted it as just like reality is it's always going to happen, right? There's always going to be some information lost in email, an amendment here, documents in one like box or SharePoint, and then more documents in here, and like things are going to get missed. But when you think about the risk of mismanaged data, I mean, it's really consequential. A developer is trying to, if a developer is trying to finance an asset, but the financial, or let me use this example, a buyer of a project during an M&A transaction is trying to diligence an asset and doesn't realize that the financial model, some of the site control agreements are not properly like logged. The site control payments aren't logged and reflective of the contracts in the actual site control agreement contracts. Well, that's an issue because they're not modeling the actual value and operating costs of an asset. Another example is there was a team I was talking to where the PPA originators, so those that were going out and bidding on like VPPAs, RFPs, he had a financial model that was out of date and didn't realize that it was wrong. And was missing an input that added 10% of cost to the project, meaning that their PPA would have been 10% underwater. In their financing committee, even if they won the deal, say they won a deal with a big corporate, Google or Starbucks or Microsoft, right? These really big energy buyers, they would have had to terminate the contract once it was realized that they had gotten it wrong, right? Potentially costing millions of dollars in termination fees or a
Right.
letter of credit, right? Has to be foregoed. That's foregone because of like they just can't commit to that pricing, or worse. At some point, they get to financing, and it costs them. It's a cost of capital concern, right? It's a risk that has to be baked into their financing costs. So, like missing that data is incredibly consequential when thinking about deals, and it does slow down people every single day. People are wasting hours or wasting thousands of dollars with their lawyers looking for data, right? It piles up, and I'd estimate that there are probably 20% or more of soft costs to a project account for process inefficiencies, at least.
Interesting. Interesting. While you were talking of VPPAs, and that's one form of transactions, and then there is financings and M&A. There's so many different things. So if you look at it very broadly, uh, what would you say is the biggest inefficiency that you see in how these deals are either sourced, structured, or closed? Right. Let's take example from any of these phases in a deal's life cycle. What are the kind of inefficiencies that you're seeing within this whole scattered data, these difficult to find things that just just get missed, or people just accepting that things will be lost in translation, right? So where do you see biggest inefficiencies in these processes today?
I think deal if I had to just pick one thing,
Yeah.
I think it would be that like deals close slower than they should because every party is having to re-verify the same information over and over.
Mm.
Developers check and try to keep track of what the progress of a project. Again, information gets lost here and there. Lenders recheck it, their counsel rechecks it, and technical advisors check it again because oftentimes it's necessary in order to, avoid some of the risks that I had just talked about. Right? It's all the same data, but fragmented and in different forms, and I think that is, could be considered like a I don't know, reconciliation, like a reconciliation tax to the project.
Mhm. Interesting.
Yeah.
So we again, we are in a market that has things changing on the tax credit side. There are interconnection delays. Of course, there's cost pressure amongst other changes that are happening. What do you believe is that one thing, if you had to point out, that the industry isn't paying enough attention to right now? Is there something that you'd like to point out?
That they're not paying attention to. Um, hmm, that's a really good question. I think that I would say that maybe a year ago I would say that people aren't paying attention to the ways in which technology can really help, solve some of those information acquisition, the kind of reconciliation tax or something that I mentioned too, around permitting, around their own projects, financing, et cetera. But, you know, we've really been seeing a rapid adoption of like our technology because people know, like industry, like developers understand that they have to rapidly increase the pace and they have the opportunity to rapidly increase the size of their portfolios, but they in order to meet energy demand of data centers. And yeah, I think that's becoming clear how AI is really helping to provide really exponential efficiency gains, as as well as like clear ROI for projects. So I would have said the promise of technology before, because as you and I probably know, you probably know too, right? Like this has been otherwise a really slow to adopt industry of technology, but I think that's shifting.
I think so too. I completely agree with you on slow to adapt. And I've seen a change since 2021, uh, much faster than I thought it would. So I remain a irrational optimist on it, and I'm sure we'll do better. Let's change the line of questioning. I have a few things that I would like to ask founder to founder, right? So a lot of founders tend to wait for that perfect moment when they want to launch the product, right? And what made you decide to start BuildQ, even if everything was not ready? Let's go launch. Let's get that feedback loop going. What's the thought process of the founder behind that?
Oh gosh, I mean, yeah, like a year and a half ago or so when I started the company, um, I, I was starting in law school and acted like deciding like not to go to into big law, otherwise very stable career, right? In
Right.
order to take the biggest risk I had taken in my life, to start a company, and I didn't know what I was doing. I had never started a company before, um, but I had a lot of friends, advisors from my time, from my Harvard network who had started companies, from Stanford, obviously, and from the industry, who were willing to provide feedback on very early iterations of the platform, so that before we even put code into a code base, right, before engineers ever did anything, we knew exactly what was going to be the problem, the wedge into the market. And I think founders who don't, like, who spend way too much trying to build the perfect product first, is bound to build something that customers won't want to pay for. That's not solving a big enough pain point. So I think it's really a necessary thing. And if I was to advise any founder or anyone thinking about starting a company, it one of the key things that I would talk about is prototyping, iterations, design. Absolutely, it's unavoidable.
That's that. I think we absolutely think alike there. I came from the same school of thought that if the first version of the product that you launch is beautiful, you launched it too late, right?
Yeah,
So
exactly.
that's a thought process I came from as well. Now that brings another interesting aspect into this, which is people, right? So along with the product, really important is the people who are working on it, right? So what do you think about the kind of people you like building with? What are the traits or the mindsets that matter most to you at this stage of BuildQ, right? It might change as you tend to evolve, but at this stage of BuildQ, what's the mindset that you're looking for? What are those traits that you're looking for people to build together?
So many wonderful words come to my mind when thinking about my team. They're incredible. I think one thing that we share in common is um, there are a few things. So, like boundless curiosity for how we can
Great
make
point.
the product and the world better by extension. Right? How can we save time and save developers, save financiers, like project teams, time and money? If we can do that, we succeed as a company. And the lines of questioning that we kind of explore every single day, I think, is critical. If you're not asking questions, you're not learning, and you have to do that with a level of like no ego. You can't have ego when
Mhm.
you're learning something new, when you're talking to customers. You can't have pride, too much pride in what you've already built, for because you might go down the wrong, continue going but down the wrong path. So I think boundless curiosity is one of those characteristics that I look for. Um, a being a detail oriented as well for my team, especially. That's something that's important. It's one of our company values is accountability, and another is excellence, and they kind of go hand in hand because we strive to produce the best outcomes for our clients, for our customers. And we try to respond to customer emails within 24 hours, right? Questions, concerns, the counterparties, like we're moving fast, but we're doing so with a real attention to get it right every time, at least with regard to customer interactions, right, in the market. um yeah, and I think just caring for other people, like, that is so important.
That's such
Like,
a great point, right?
like, that's just a baseline. We're building a community here in part. um one that we're spending 8, 9, 12 hours together every single day. Like,
Absolutely.
whenever things get hard and the workload is intense, like, you want to like the people that you're in the trenches with, so to speak, right? um so that's incredibly important.
Oh, absolutely. I think those are some great points here. Boundless curiosity. I was taking notes. Accountability, excellence, great words. And when you, the point that you said, curiosity without ego, I think that's such an important point. And I remember, back in the day when I was younger, if I can call me call that. Somebody told me that disagreeing with somebody does not mean that you're being disrespectful, right? So go ahead,
Yeah.
disagree. Healthy disagreements in business are great to have, but yeah, without ego is such an important aspect of an aspect of what you said.
Yeah, I
Those
mean,
are some
you
great
probably
points,
see
yeah.
this too, right? Like, you can't have disagreement, though. You can't have actual constructive conversations where like you're stress testing an idea with like disagreement, right? Unless you have a foundation of trust. If you don't have that trust, you cannot have those kind of conversations, not safely, not not spontaneously when they're needed, right? If you're worried about, oh, someone's going to personally attack me if I like disagree with them, um, like that, those conversations won't happen. And especially for an early stage startup, though I would argue any enterprise, right, is depends on that, depends on people uh, actually disagreeing. If everyone was a yes man, well, I don't think you're going to build a great company. I'm curious. I'll throw it back to you. What are some traits in people that you look for? You have a pretty big team, from what I understand.
Curiosity was definitely one on my list as well, because in this business, if you're not curious, you'll be dead soon, right? That's one. I also look for people who are incredibly hungry, right? I just, it's a trait that I attribute a lot of little success that I have seen in life too, where I really want to see somebody who's really hungry. I also look for an attribute that I think is really important, which is consistency, right? Motivation is temporary, consistency is permanent, right? Can you come in every day at 9:15 and do that job every day, right? I really value that consistency in people. Sincerity is another thing, and a simple example of sincerity I give to people is that always remember your first day at your job, like you were most sincere. You had a new diary in front of you, you had the best pen, you were taking notes, and then slowly a lot of things faded away, right? So I tell them, if you can be as sincere as you were on the first day, you don't need to do anything different. All of these things require no talent, right? You just be as consistent as you were on day one, and then you will do well. And of course, I think the last point that you made is caring about people, right? These could be clients, co-workers, peers, anybody, right? That caring angle was definitely something it resonated with, and I completely agree with that. Yeah.
No, those are really good. I haven't thought about the consistency in that way. I haven't heard that. But I like it. I think it's really, I think it's right, right? You have to have, uh, that's all like ego is like you start thinking that you know better than people, like, and your opinion should be regarded just because you've been there longer. Like that makes zero sense to me. And it always
Exactly.
has. I've gotten in trouble from bosses in the past where I've like
I
been
can
like,
imagine.
but why? Like,
Right.
I don't think you're
Exactly.
right. And like some took that really well and taught, like educated
And
me if
others
I
won't.
was wrong. And then others didn't, like that is just
Yeah. Yeah.
you know,
When people take that disagreement as being, disrespectful, I think they just lose an opportunity to learn or teach. Either ways, right? You just
totally.
lose an opportunity to grow mutually, right? And
Absolutely.
I think that's something that very early on in my career, I was very fortunate to work with, some good mentors who taught me that, and really valued that. So if today somebody disagrees with me, I see that as an opportunity for me to grow, right?
Mhm.
So absolutely, absolutely,
Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. I think that's great.
All right, so let's talk about the future, right? Let's talk about 5 years from now, right? How do you want BuildQ to have changed the way energy professionals work with data, diligence, and decisions, right? Data, diligence, and decisions, right? How do you want BuildQ to have influenced this?
Um, our our vision is to make project execution 10 times faster. And whether that means solely, I mean, but the challenging task of removing those opportunities for process failure, removing the kind of verification checks or making those 10 times faster. But it also means partnering with the right people and like companies or groups to um, get get projects done faster from earliest stages of development all the way through development, construction, and financing. The future means collaborating and share, which and oftentimes, kind of back to the beginning of our conversation, like means sharing information, collaborating with regulators, with the ISOs and the interconnection queues, and the companies also looking to expedite the interconnection queue. Right, I think we'll see a lot of consolidation around the technologies that are actually working for these project teams, and um, that in and of itself, that kind of collaboration uh, provides many opportunities to have even further efficiencies. So we're looking at it really from a whole product, a whole process perspective. We're playing a role as an integrator of these resources and of these teams uh, through our platform, through our services. But yeah, it's always like, will this save our customers time? Will it save them money? Um, and we go from there.
That's a great point. I think 10x, right? 10 times
Yes.
faster is what I take from
Yeah.
this one. Thank you, Marissa. I think this was fantastic. Thank you. Really appreciate your time. I think you brought some really nice insights out there. I think our listeners would really appreciate your perspective. Of course, on building a startup and people and product and efficiencies and inefficiencies, but also the fact that you were able to bring out some key issues that exist may not be addressed in every conversation. Some people may shy away from addressing those issues, but yes, while all of us build with passion, we build with an extraordinary amount of energy. It's also very important for us to realize that there are things in the industry that can definitely be improved, and let's all work towards that. So really appreciate you taking the time today. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a great conversation.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for listening to Barrels to Batteries, brought to you by Enerdatics. If you enjoyed this episode, please follow the show on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you listen to podcasts, and share it with a colleague who cares about the future of energy. This is Mohit Kaul. See you next time. Thank you so much.